instead of being so firm on yourself and looking at yourself through the eyes of your mother, or looking at yourself through the eyes of your father, or looking at yourself through the eyes of your community, I'm encouraging you to look at yourself through the eyes of God. If there's any way I could recommend you to reparent yourself, is looking at yourself through the eyes of God. Hey ladies, welcome back to the Boss Babe Sanctuary. I am your host, Coach Michelle Maiden, and I am excited to have you here today. The Boss Babe Sanctuary is the place where we go to take those capes off and get the real nourishment, the real feeding of our souls that we need so that we can go out into this world and thrive and flourish as the women God called us to be. So today I want to talk about reparenting yourself. Now, originally, this is not where this episode was going to go. I was actually going to talk about the top 5 reasons why you're struggling to work on your self-care or to really keep up with your self-care routine. However, in the process of getting ready to do that episode, I just felt the need to have a conversation about reparenting yourself. Now, the first thing I want to say is that when I talk about reparenting yourself, this isn't necessarily vilifying your parents. Okay. It's not necessarily doing that. What it's doing is that you have to acknowledge, it's so important to acknowledge what was poured into you, and you have to recognize if it was poison. Okay. Now, obviously, if you are poisoned, it's very easy to make the person that poisoned you the villain, right? To say, they deserve whatever punishment they should get, right? It's very easy to have animosity towards them, hate towards them, whatever it may be. That's not what I'm telling you to do. In fact, anyone that works for me, one of the things I prioritize in the process of you healing and prioritizing yourself is forgiveness. So in recognizing the ways and areas where you need to reparent yourself, it's important to also have a heart that's open to forgiveness. I understand, I do know, because I've worked with women that have come from all different types of situations, different types of extremes. In fact, I have my own extremes situations in my life, right? So this is not me telling you to brush things under the rug, nothing of the sort. Matter of fact, I want you to dig deep. I want you to pull it all out. I want you to face it. I want you to deal with it. But what I am saying is this, is that the way that those things stuck to you and the way that they conditioned you to think that this is the person that you need to be, I am inviting you into the conversation about reparenting yourself. And when it comes to reparenting yourself, especially if you grew up in an environment where you respect your elders, right? You respect your elders even when they are wrong. You respect your elders even when you know they got it wrong. And when you grow up in a situation like that, you can develop this cognitive dissonance where you are not intentionally trying to lie, but you lie, right? You sugarcoat things in order to not make people that were involved in pouring into you and nurturing you look bad. So you're so busy protecting them that you're keeping yourself open to attacks from the enemy. And what I mean by that is that when you don't acknowledge what was poured into you that should not have been there, that did not serve you, in fact, it harmed you, there's this deception that created in your mind where you're calling those things that are good evil and those things that are evil good. Because if something has been given to you and it's not in your best interest, oftentimes the reason we don't want to face it because we don't want to admit that those people that we have respect for, we don't want to admit that they have it wrong. Because if we admit that they did it wrong and what they gave us was wrong, what are we saying about them? Okay. And I want you to acknowledge the behavior. I want you to acknowledge what you receive without trying to vilify the person that gave it to you. Now, this is difficult, especially as women, right? Dealing with emotions, and women typically like to classify things and unfortunately put a strong label on something. And this is going to be very difficult for you because you're going to have to go through the healing process without having to forcefully place a label on somebody, without having to forcefully place a label on the person that harmed you or abused you or simply just neglected or abandoned you. You're going to have to allow yourself to heal and look at it from a very matter-of-fact way, a very, black and white, 1 + 1 = 2, without trying to attach yourself to some kind of emotion that paints you as the victim and paints them as the villain. No, we're not doing that. Okay. Because obviously at the end of the day, there's probably things, if you sit down with whoever those individuals were, there were things that were poured into their lives that contributed to them being able to hurt you or neglect you or fall short in the way that they did. Right. And we all fall short of the glory of God. Matter of fact, that was my on the Bible app. If you have that on your phone, I believe that was the message that was sent out today, that we all fall short of the glory of God. So let's get back to reparenting yourself, right? Let's stay on track. So what reparenting yourself looks like, and I'll say this fundamentally, is it looks like reloving yourself. Yeah. That was going to be one of the top 5 things that, you need to focus on, or one of the top 5 things that you're struggling with that's impeding with you being able to focus on your self-care, which was you loving yourself. The number one thing when it comes to reparenting yourself is really dealing with the fact that you struggle with too much self-hate, especially if you were criticized a lot as a child, especially if you were judged a lot, you were pushed to be perfect, or you were in this kind of perfectionist type of culture, or maybe you were just simply never good enough, constantly being compared, whatever it may be. There can be a form of self-hate that you develop with that. And self-hate can be difficult to gauge for many people, because they might say, well, I don't wake up and say I hate myself. No, but you treat yourself like you don't like yourself. You're extremely mean to yourself. You're extremely mean to yourself, and you justify it by whatever it may be. You may say, oh, well, I am not as smart, or I'm not as good, or whatever it may be. You just have all of these stories that you say to yourself that are mean. Things that your children, if you love them and you care for them and you nurture them, if you heard those things come out of their mouth, you probably rebuke it. Like, my children are not allowed to say I can't and say a lot of negative things about themselves. Like, they're not allowed to define themselves in a negative way. And I don't even have to stop them. They will stop each other. Okay. I have an 8-year-old Zuri, and I have a 4-year-old, 5-year-old. He just turned 5 March 3rd. I have a 5-year-old Ezra. And the way he is that he will let you know, like, no, mommy, this person said this person said that. Or if they treat each other a certain kind of way, he will come to me and say to me, mommy, Zuri's treating me like she doesn't love me. He said something the other day, guys, that was so interesting to me. He said, mommy, Zuri's treating me like a popular girl. And that struck me, because what he was basically saying is that she is treating me with an attitude of arrogance, and as if I don't matter, right? Like, when you watch those shows and there's that popular mean girl, he was trying to put an image or a character on what he's experiencing. And he says, she's treating me like a popular girl. So I had to call her, and I, of course, had the conversation with her about what that was about. They're kids, guys. You know how kids are. It really shows you when the Bible says, what is the contention really between you guys? Is it not the fact that you guys fight over the fact of jealousy and envy and strife, et cetera? And you know how kids are. They will count grapes. You give one 4 grapes and the other one 3 grapes. Oh, you gave this one more grapes than me, etc. Matter of fact, they won't even start their meal. They will take out a measuring stick to figure out, are you treating one better than the other? The kids, they have a tendency to want to make sure that there's equality, right? And justice. And they don't recognize the fact that the baby is the baby. Okay. And my daughter, she was the baby for a very long time, for practically 4 years. So when her brother came in, she was happy to have a new brother, but she paid attention to the fact that all this love and, attention that used to go towards her, it moved in a different area. So it's been quite an adjustment trying to get them adjusted to the fact that there's 2 of them. And even though they're absolutely in love with each other, matter of fact, yesterday, just a sidebar, guys, yesterday I took him to the park, and my daughter, she's staying after school with her teacher to do some extra work. And while she was staying after school, I took him to the park across the street. And then he's asking for his sister. He's like standing. There's the first time his sister wasn't with him. He's like, where's my sister? So me jokingly playing around with him, I said, oh no, I gave her away. And he said, wait, what? And I said, yeah, I gave her away. You've been telling me that she's been real mean to you, and I couldn't take it anymore, buddy. So it's just me and you now. And he freaked out. He was like, where's my sister? I want my sister. So I had to record him, because I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you told me that she's mean to you. So I gave her away. And my daughter, guys, honestly, she's a sweetheart, but you know how it is with little kids, big sister, little brother, that whole thing, right? He does something wrong. And when he does something wrong, my daughter's very much so, structure, order, etc. And if she jumps in and tells him, hey, you're not supposed to do this, the little kid, they try to get away with it. You're not my mom. So then now she tries to put the reinforcement on him, and then it just turns into a whole big explosion. So you guys know, anyways, I'm not getting deep into this because sometimes people get when you open up a small bit of conversation, people think that it opens the opportunity for you to comment on their life, which just is not what it is, right? I'm just sharing a story with you guys, a little bit of my life. So you can kind of see like the different things that I deal with where I glean wisdom from it. But anyways, I said I gave her away, buddy. And he freaked out. He absolutely freaked out. And he was like, Mom, no. So I took him to the park so he can go play around. And guys, he would not play. This boy came back to my car 4 times and said, go get his sister right now. I said, well, what are you going to do so that she's not mean? Because I'm not dealing with it any longer. I'm not dealing with this back and forth any longer, this bickering. He said, Mom, I'm going to talk to my sister and I have a trick up my sleeve. I'm going to have a conversation with my sister and this is what's going to happen and that's going to happen. But I need my sister right now. I love my sister. I'm like, okay. So when his sister came, when I went and got his sister, and I was like, your brother missed you. And I shared the video with her so she could see how he was reacting. He was going to bat for her. Okay. And she was just smiling, sitting there. I said, you see how much your brother loves you, right? I'm telling you guys, anywhere I'm at, if I'm at the store, he'll say, get this for his sister. They had pictures. He's like, this dress would look so good on my sister, right? So I was letting her know because she thinks that he's the baby. He gets special treatment, of course. And I said, you see how your brother cares about you? So my whole conditioning with them is to make sure that they have this bond and this care about each other and they look out for each other, right? But maybe you growing up, you didn't have parents that one looked out for you and really made sure that you were nurtured in that kind of way. And number 2, sometimes we grow up with parents that try to pit other siblings against each other if you have a parent that has more than one. So we oftentimes can grow up in dynamics where the exposure that we had and the care that we had was not as loving. And this can make us go out there into the world. We can be confrontational with people. We can be antisocial, right? We can be very awkward in certain environments. We struggle when it comes to communication, articulating our feelings. Maybe we're not direct. I saw this one video on YouTube. I saw this video on TikTok a while ago. And on the video, it was this woman talking about the city that she comes from and how the way she would let her mother-in-law know, her mother-in-law would let her know that she wants to bake her like a strawberry pie, is that she would get a bunch of strawberries and said, man, it would be very nice if I had a strawberry pie. Or it would be, man, these strawberries would be great in a strawberry pie. And then you're supposed to pick up on those cues. And then now that's your opportunity to offer yourself and say, would you like me to make you a strawberry pie? And he said, oh my gosh, I would really appreciate that. So instead of directly saying to the person, hey, I would really love some strawberry if you would make a strawberry pie, in that environment or that culture in that home, that is being that direct with somebody is thought to be rude, and you're putting the person in an awkward position where they have to say no to you, versus you just kind of making a suggestion and allowing them to grab whether or not they want to do that. Well, in my world, if you operate that way, that looks like manipulation. If you kind of just throw something out there and say, man, it'd be real nice if somebody could make a strawberry pie to me, I'm like looking at you side eye, like, what you trying to say? Like, that is manipulation to me. But for them, being so direct, that feels more like manipulation, because for them, that directness feels too aggressive. So don't be that aggressive with me. Instead, be very subtle in the way that you approach it. But for me, that subtlety looks like manipulation. Anyways, getting back to this. So those are light ways where you might have been parented and it might be causing conflict in the career that you're in and the environment that you're in. Imagine if you're in a household and you're dealing with someone that's a partner that's similar to me, and then you're a partner that kind of suggests things and you're having friction with your partner because of that communication style, right? So reparenting yourself doesn't have to be this whole villain type of story. It might literally just be the simple fact that there's communication issues, there's understanding issues, there's ways that you process things and read things, especially if you come from different cultures, etc. But on the other end, there's a big piece of reparenting yourself when it just simply comes down to the things that you feel guilty about, the things that you feel shame about, the things that you feel like you have to do, you must do it. A lot of my reparenting and my pushing or encouraging you to reparent yourself has to do with those things. And in the next video, I will be talking more about those 5 things that most people struggle struggle with that are really getting in the way of their self-care. But I want to encourage you to begin the process and be open to treating yourself with more self-compassion and self-love. Instead of being so firm on yourself and looking at yourself through the eyes of your mother, or looking at yourself through the eyes of your father, or looking at yourself through the eyes of your community, I'm encouraging you to look at yourself through the eyes of God. If there's any way I could recommend you to reparent yourself, is looking at yourself through the eyes of God, looking at yourself with a different lens. A different lens, not the lens that you're currently looking at yourself on, where you don't feel like you're enough, where you don't feel adequate, where you don't feel qualified, where you don't feel like you measure up, where you don't feel like you have that much value, or you feel like, okay, my merits aren't up there and I have to go, and you're overcompensating in all these different ways because of the simple fact that you feel like there's so much lack. Right? Operating in this way is going to put you in a mindset of scarcity. It's going to put you in a mindset, unfortunately, of operating with this energy of desperation, and it's going to manifest in your life in different ways. So reparenting yourself, for me, fundamentally looks like love. It fundamentally looks like you treating yourself like somebody that you actually love and somebody that you actually care about. And again, so many of you guys deal with yourself in a way where you are so mean to yourself. And it's unfortunate that you go through situations where you latch on to the things that people have done to you, the things that people have said to you, the ways that people have treated you. And now you allow those things to stick to you, and you allow that to be the lens that you see yourself through. Because maybe the person that mistreated you, you put that person on a certain level. And now that you've been mistreated by that person, your brain is interpreting that as you're not valuable because this person who you put on this level treated you this way. So now you're fighting against this idea that you're not enough or whatever it may be. When I tell you release, 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 that is one of the things that I really talk about, which is forgiveness. You're going to have to forgive. Because if you're going to begin reparenting yourself and you're going to begin seeing yourself from a different light, the light that God has of you, the light that God shines on you, and the things that God says to you, what does Jeremiah 29:11 say? For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, and they are not plans to harm you, but plans to give you hope and a new future. Those are his plans towards you. So God loves you and he's speaking life over you. But if you've been in environments, and understand, it doesn't mean one person parented you. But when I'm saying sometimes reparenting just simply means the village, the way the village parented you wasn't healthy. So now we have to do the work to undo that. So a part of the series coming up is really going to be doing with a lot of that deconstruction, because I want you to be able to love yourself. Because guys, I'm so serious about it. You're going to have a strong level of self-care and self-love in order to move into that next level. And you want it. You need it. So with that being said, I'm going to close out now. Remember, guys, the Beauty for Ashes program, the promo that I'm running is ending now, March 7th. Take advantage. Okay. I have tons of women that have joined the program that have already started the workshop. And now they're moving into that 21-day period where they're really focusing on allowing themselves to go through that transformation process and really deconstruct those things that are standing in the way of them becoming the woman that God called them to be, because they're still operating on that survival strength. And we're going to talk more about survivor strength and what that looks like. So if you want to take advantage of that, go ahead, click the link in the description, put the code FREEDOM in, and that will give you 48% off. After that, guys, we're going back to regular price. Okay. So I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great one. Bye.